Mac guys here with you on Birds 365. We got another JM to join the fray. One of my favorite media members. You can follow him on Twitter at John Marks Media on Twitter, and that will get you to his YouTube show where he's still sharing his insights with all the Delaware Valley. We're going to corner his insights for the next 25, 30 minutes here with us. John Marks here with us on Birds 365. Who's looking good with the backwards hat. I'm thinking about doing that tomorrow, John. What do you think? Well,
Go for it.
Look as good as Johnny Marks with a back. Yeah.
I'm too old for that. I can't be cool like Sean.
Yeah, neither can I. But Marks is pulling it off. Gotta give him credit for it.
The old guy skateboarding in The Simpsons.
Johnny Marks saw some of your YouTube stuff. Kenny Pickett, now a Philadelphia Eagle. It because it happened at the same time Fields got relief. I guess it's a decent story, but he's Kenny Pickett. He's had 2 years in the league. Yeah, the Steelers have won more games than they've lost when he's played, but I've watched him play. Kenny Pickett does nothing special. Is it just the fact that it's a quarterback that some people have overreacted to this? And I might be guilty of charge. Why do you think Kenny Pickett is getting as much attention and play as he is as the backup for a guy we hope never sees the field here in Philadelphia?
Well, I mean, I think one of the reasons is that we've seen the backup see the field quite a bit with Jalen Hurts. Now, not a crazy amount, but every year Jalen seems to be banged up at least a little bit, and you have to see the backup in there. So I think there's that. And then when you put him next to the shiny object that's Justin Fields, now a lot of people are going to compare him and say, well, why would you want Kenny Pickett? Why would you not want Justin Fields? The reality is that you're hoping somebody can come in and can run your offense if the starting quarterback is out. And Kenny Pickett has shown me no reason to believe he's a starting quarterback in this league. But Howie liked him coming out of Pitt. If you remember, I forget what game it was, but I think it was
North Carolina.
Yeah, Howie's up there with the binoculars.
Overtimes, yeah. I asked Kenny about it because Howie doesn't go to a lot of college games for people that don't know. Now, it helped because it was the Thursday game, the weird conference, whatever the hell it was. I can't even keep the conferences straight with college.
No, that was a straight ACC game.
Was it? So anyway, it was a Thursday night game. So the midweek helped and the proximity helped, but he doesn't go. So it was noteworthy that he was interested in.
Because at that point, you still didn't know the organization. It seemed like they were given signs that maybe they weren't totally sold on Jalen Hurts. They were in on a lot of conversations with Russell Wilsons and the Deshaun Watsons, et cetera. So they probably liked him in the draft process. They weren't going to draft him. So if they liked him coming out of college and now he's been in the league for 2 years, they gave up a minimal amount to grab him. And I think here's the important thing. He's not going to cost a lot of money over the next 2 years.
No, that's
cost,
very important.
Control, probably one of the biggest factors that they look at. Mariota's making $8 million a year. He stinks. So to get a quality backup, you're having to pay almost a premium price these days. So he's under contract the next 2 years. I think Howie also looks at it and says, like, hey, maybe we could even trade him if he has to come in and play and he looks great. We get a draft pick for him. So I think he checks a lot of those boxes. I don't think Kenny Pickett's great. I think he can come in and he can win a game or two if need be. If Jalen Hurts misses 3 games, they can win a game or two from that. But he was not good in Pittsburgh. I think we all know that. But you also look at Pittsburgh and the offense that they run and the offensive coordinate that
they Canada. Let's play in Canada. Yeah.
So let's see what he does in Philadelphia. Hopefully, we never have to see him play. But I think it was a safe trade to make, and now you have a young quarterback who can be your backup for the next 2 years.
Yeah, man. I think it checks all the boxes. I've said to Jody, I like the move, John. I think it makes a lot of sense. You bring up the cost-effective part of it. Howie loves get him in the quarterback factory. Maybe they can spin him off. Maybe he's got to play 4 games. He wins 3. Maybe he turns into AJ Beasley. You get something for him. Moving forward down the line, people convince themselves into quarterbacks other than the small hands. And by the way, Austin Powers, the small hand, he never fumbles. He's fumbled 1 time. That's the one thing he doesn't do. He's lost 1 fumble over his 2 years. I think it makes sense. And that's how I look at typically when the Eagles do something. It makes sense to me, and that's why I give the organization credit. A couple times they've gone off the reservation though, and moves haven't made sense to me. Most notably Saquon Barkley. What were your thoughts when you saw the Eagles go out of their normal way of doing business and say, let's bring in the big time back?
Well, I think if I wasn't an Eagle fan and didn't live here, I may have a slightly different opinion on the move, because it's what I said when the Giants franchised him last year was like, what are you franchising him for? You guys aren't going to win anything, right? You're giving a 1-year contract to a guy that's probably not going to be there next year, which he's not. John, I looked at it after it was all said and done, and I was surprised that they went top of the market to do it. Howie, he's always lurking, and if he feels like he's getting good value, that's when he gets involved. No, they targeted him from the beginning, and this was very mutual. And I think it also shows you that Saquon, he's mad at the Giants, right? Like, this is kind of a vindictive move to be like, I'm going to go play for the Eagles. You wouldn't pay me, they will pay me. So it has a lot of those angles to it as well. I just look at the money that Jacksonville gave Gabe Davis and the money that the Eagles gave Saquon Barkley. It's comparable. It's similar. Yeah. And I'll tell you, Saquon Barkley is going to have more of an impact on the Eagles than Gabe Davis will have on the Jags. So while wide receivers are getting overvalued these days in free agent dollars, running backs aren't. So I'll take Saquon Barkley over Gabe Davis.
All right. Then let me counter that, John.
Yes.
Because the name I've continuously brought up, I don't know if you paid attention to Aaron Jones at the end of last season. I mean, he was the best running back in football, and he does it all. He's a better receiver than Saquon Barkley. Sorry. Look at his numbers over the years. Consistently better. He's single-handedly, let me finish, Jody.
Okay.
Destroyed the Dallas Cowboys in a playoff game, 3 touchdowns. He got cut because he's about to turn 30, which I get. He's a little bit older, but he's got less touches. He's coming off that. He got, I believe, $7 million. Why not do that? And more, 1 year, $8 million.
Here's you got to take the timing into consideration. Aaron Jones got released after the Eagles had come to an agreement with Saquon Barkley. They'd already made the commitment to Barkley. So Aaron Jones wasn't a legitimate option
timing,
at that point.
I'm
2020 hindsight is real easy after you sign a guy and the other guy takes available and comes and signs for less.
I could go, to me, because of the receiving aspect. That's the only reason I bring up Aaron Jones. Look at Derrick Henry's contract. Look at all the other big time backs. Except Josh Jacobs, who got way too much money.
And that's a 1-year contract as well. Jacobs.
Jacobs.
He got 4 years.
Yeah. But if you look at the actual contract, I think it's 1 for 14. All these contracts are nonsense, right?
Yeah, you can get out of it.
Yeah, Barkley's a 2-year deal, even though they're calling it a 3-year deal. Right. He'll be under contract for 2. They'll either redo it or cut him after 2.
Yeah.
But I mean, with Saquon, a couple of things here. And let's not be naive about this. This is a sizzle signing for the Eagles after how last year ended. This is like, you look at how I even felt like this going into free agency. Not that I'm out on the Eagles, but I was kind of like, you just had such a bad taste in your mouth to how the season ended last year. This is a sizzle signing, and you get yourself in trouble when you make signings like this. When you overvalue a position and a player based on, oh man, could you imagine this offense with Saquon Barkley, with AJ, with Devontae Smith? So I think there's a little bit of that. But also, it feels like, and this is how the Eagles should be acting, that the most important thing about this season is getting Jalen Hurts back to the Jalen Hurts we saw at the end of 2022 and the first half of 2023. Because the reality is, I don't care. We can talk about everything else that we want to, cornerbacks, slot corners, linebackers, wide receivers. If Jalen Hurts doesn't turn back into that player that we saw, the Eagles aren't winning anything, right? So how do you do that? Well, he's got to be protected, but he's also got to be better in the pocket. He's got to have better pocket awareness. You get a new offensive coordinator. Now you have a running back that you feel like at least you can lean on a little bit more. We'll see what happens. But, this is, to me, this is a sizzle signing that maybe Howie got a little bit carried away with.
All right, let me give you a sizzle signing, Johnny Mac. I like that phrase.
I like that too. And I like the description because I agree with that. I think they went out of character. And I think John's right. They went out of character because they were trying to get the bad taste out of everybody's mouth and get everybody.
Here's what I see as their sizzle signing. I got a pretty good crystal ball working here. Week 13, Eagles going out to Hollywood again this year, playing the Rams. Hassan Reddick, who was acquired for a 5th-round draft pick by LA, already has 12 sacks for the Rams with 4 weeks to play. And new Eagle defensive sizzle, defensive edge player, Mr. Huff has 6 sacks, half as many as Hassan Reddick, and is being run on liberally when the Eagles are having trouble stopping the run again because he's the second coming of Jason Babin in the wide 9. I would argue that he is more of the sizzle signing, $17.5 million, than Saquon Barkley at 12. Did the Eagles correctly roll the dice here on this young, has never been a full-time, I didn't forget there's no full-time players on the edge anymore, but at least a 50% of the time player for the Jets these past 2 years, giving him as much money as they did? Is that not more sizzle than Barkley?
Yeah, I mean, for the position, it's not, because that is a standard. The Eagles are projecting they're buying the potential they believe that they're going to get from Huff. They're not. He has 1 year. He has one really good year of sacks, and before that, it's like, all right, he showed potential, all the metrics, the analytics, he gets off the ball, pressure, and all that stuff. Reality is, he's got to get to the quarterback, and if he's not getting double-digit sacks, this isn't a good signing. So if he turns into a 7-sack guy or an 8-sack guy, and 3 or 4 of those sacks are against slow tackles that he took advantage of, and he had multiple sack games, this will not be a good signing. And honestly, Jody, you bring it up Hassan Reddick. Maybe it's just me. Hassan Reddick has been unbelievable as an Eagle, and I don't know what the contract demands are. I don't know what he's asking for. The Eagles obviously don't want to sign him to what he's asking for. He probably wants to be valued at $25 to $30 million a year, which the Eagles aren't doing. That's fine. But man, you got to find a way to make this work, at least for this season. Give him a bump like the Chiefs did to Chris Jones. Give him something that says, hey, listen, we know you want a contract. We're not able to work that out. We're going to give you some extra money. Hassan Reddick being here, this is supposed to be a Super Bowl roster. This isn't a step back year or a neutral year. This is supposed to be where they're going for, they're winning the Super Bowl. I think it's a huge mistake if they don't keep Hassan Reddick.
Agreed.
How much do you think, and we heard Howie, and I break my own rule. I always say, John, that these executives, coaches aren't under oath in these press conferences, and we all take it. Well, Howie said out in Indianapolis, essentially, we got to get Nolan Smith more involved. Now, he might be trying to blow some smoke and try to prop up the player. Might mean nothing, might mean everything. But at some point, if you have Hassan Reddick and he's making, let's say, $20 million a year, and Bryce Huff and he's making 17, and Josh Sweat is making 12, and you want to get the first round pick involved, Nolan Smith, and you still got BG. Yeah. At what point is it too much?
Well, I mean, Nolan, if they get rid of Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith better be ready to come in.
Oh yeah,
and have quality snaps. And like you had said, Howie can prop him up a little bit. If after the first year they're saying, I don't know, we don't know about this guy year 2. So if they do move on from Hassan Reddick, let's talk about it. You have Huff, man, you're betting on him to be your best pass rusher by far. BG's got a high motor. He's going to play limited snaps. He's going to be fine. But really, you're not counting on him to be anything more than he was last year. At least I'm not, right? So Josh Sweat's got to bounce back, right? Like Nolan Smith's got to have more contributions to the defense. For a team that values the pass rush, it makes no sense to get rid of Hassan Reddick. I'd rather have an extra pass rusher where with Vic Fangio, maybe he can move Brandon inside and he can play some inside snaps, rushing the passer in passing situations. I mean, I don't think it's too much at all. I think Hassan Reddick needs to be here next year.
All right, Johnny Marks, I'm going to give you a phrase that I know you understand because you got your hat on backwards, and all you young guys get this. A guy who is trending in the wrong direction is Devin White. I got reamed by a caller the other day on WIP because I suggested that he's not a good linebacker and that his better days are by. He made a Pro Bowl. He's a former All-Pro player. Yeah, that was a while ago. You know who else was a former Pro Bowl player? Shaq Leonard. How'd Shaq look coming in for the Eagles the second half?
In perpetuity. Everybody's in stasis. Everybody. Once you're an All-Pro,
You're an
You're an
all-pro.
all-pro.
Forever.
Yeah.
Trending the wrong way. Devin White. Is he going to be able to make plays for the Eagles at linebacker this year? Is this one of those where Howie's betting on change of scenery, going to recapture the former magic, or was this just a shot in the dark?
It's when you go and you buy the lottery tickets, Jody. I don't know if you're a lottery.
I play lottery. I'm in tonight. Mega $700 million. Oh, I got my tickets already.
So you have the scratch offs and you have the $1 scratch offs, you have the $2 scratch offs.
Yeah, those I don't play.
and then you got the $20 scratch off. And the $20 scratch off, you can win
that's
more.
pricey, by the way.
Right? Oh, yeah. So let's say 10. Devin White's a $5 scratch off as opposed to the $1 scratch off. So what they've done this offseason, and they've added they're throwing numbers at the linebacker position, right? Like, so they have a couple of guys that they brought in, and Devin White is their priciest lottery ticket, albeit I love when you see it's always code when you see a Schefter say up to $7.5 million.
Yeah.
That's code for BS. This guy's making about $3 or $4 million less than I'm saying, but he's going to make $4.5 million. And if he reaches his incentives, that's a great thing. It means he's played, he's been productive.
Fair.
But to your point, Jody, I thought Devin White was a better player than he actually was. I remember last August, he had talked about he wanted to be traded because he wanted to be extended. They weren't extending him. Well, they weren't extending him for a reason. He was a Super Bowl hero. You would think that they would want to reward him and extend him. But the more I read about him and the more I talk to some people that I know down in Tampa, he's wildly inconsistent. And that one stretch during the Super Bowl year was the best he played in his career. Outside of that,
one of the great anomalies in sports.
Yeah.
I talk about it with Jody all the time. He was phenomenal in a 3-game run. He looked like the 5th overall pick in the draft. For the rest of his 5 years, he looked like an undrafted free agent who was really athletic.
And now you have Fangio. So now you're saying, because God, like Vic Fangio is the only defensive coordinator you could ever have when you listen to the Eagles. He's so great. He's got a defensive coordinator tree. They just fired one of his guys after halfway through last year. But like so now Fangio's got to do now. He's got to get him to where he wants him, right? And by the way, Fangio, the players didn't really like Fangio down in Miami last year. Everything that I'm reading about Fangio is there were guys that weren't necessarily happy with him. He left after a year. So they're betting big on the new defensive coordinator coming in here and reshaping this defense. And I think he'll be a better coach, obviously, than what they had last year. But, you still got to get consistent play out of him. So my fear with Devin White is you're going to get the game where you're like, wow, this guy's unbelievable. We haven't had talent in linebacker here in a while. And then 3 games after 2-3 games in a row after that, you're saying, what the hell is this guy doing? He's an idiot out there. So we'll see.
You're going to get the Nick Morrow 3-sack game, and then nothing. Yeah, and nothing. Out of position. You're right with Vic. We've gotten away from it because there's been such an influx of free agent moves, and the Eagles are doing something, seems like every day. But you're right, John. They propped up Vic Fangio like he's a savior, and he's a good coach. He's been coaching for a very long time, and he's put together some great defenses over the years. But if you don't have personnel, I called him. They're making him out to be like he's the Greek god of defense, and he's here, so we're going to be fine on defense. You think people are buying into that too much, and they're going to be disappointed because these expectations. This was a bad defense last year, and it wasn't all because of Sean Desai and Matt Patricia. They had bad personnel.
Yep. Yeah. No. And last year I remember. And okay, it's a Twitter poll and it's a sports radio Twitter poll, but fans hated Jonathan Gannon so much. Sean Desai, just by coming in here, was a better defensive coordinator than Jonathan Gannon.
Know.
Ask any Eagle fan. 80% Eagle fans are saying, oh, it's a huge upgrade.
It's got to be better. It's got to be better.
Yeah, but meanwhile, no one knew who Sean Desai was before he had a press conference and they hired him. So again, last year, fans weren't worried about the new offensive coordinator and the new defensive coordinator until they were worried about him, right? Yep. So let's see what Vic Fangio does. And actually, John, it reminded me of, remember how bad Billy Davis was as the defensive coordinator? Chip Kelly, totally overmatched, should never have been a defensive coordinator in the NFL. Jim Schwartz came in, and I'm not a huge Jim Schwartz fan, but you could tell right away the difference between a Billy Davis and a Jim Schwartz. Jim Schwartz knows what the hell he's doing. I think you're going to see the same type of thing with Fangio coming in as far as adjustments and things like that. But that doesn't mean that he's going to be able to make up for lack of personnel on defense because no coach is going to do that.
All right, got to get you on the record. Basically, almost every guest we've had on, I've asked this question since last week when Saquon signed. Part of Saquon's value to legitimize spending $12 billion on a running back is to get him the ball via the air coming out of the backfield. That has not been a strong suit of either the Philadelphia Eagles or Jalen Hurts since those two, with Nick Sirianni as the head coach, teamed up here in Philadelphia. That just we can debate why, we can try and put reasons to it or whatever, but I don't think anybody can argue they have not been good at it. Has it been more because of Sirianni, his offense, his way of doing things? We got to get the ball to AJ and Devontae. Or is it more because Jalen either A, isn't good at it, or B, doesn't like doing it? Would you point the finger more at the offense, its direction, the play calling, or would you point it more at the quarterback that that's not his strength? And so therefore, yeah, I'm not going to throw the ball to the back out of the backfield.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to know more after this year because Kellen Moore is going to want to throw to the ball to the back, right? Like he realizes, and I thought this is what we were getting last year with Swift.
Yeah.
He's an excellent receiver. He's not necessarily an every down back, but he's an excellent receiver. So, of course, they're going to try to utilize him out of the backfield. John, maybe you remember this, but I remember something to the effect of Nick Sirianni or somebody talking about how they don't really practice the screen pass all that much. I don't even think they tried to make it a part of their
They
offense.
practice bubble screens.
No, that doesn't count.
Maybe they need to practice it more. Jesus. But going back to Andy, and Donovan was very good at selling it. The offensive line was very good at executing it. And they had Brian Westbrook and other good backs to do it. But that was such a huge weapon in their passing game. And really, Andy liked to say it was a part of the running game as well, which made everybody mad. Yeah. But why wouldn't you want to utilize that as a part of your game, especially the amount that they were blitzing Jalen Hurts at the end of last year? And that's not going to go away. It worked. So they're going to be blitzing Jalen Hurts. It's the perfect play call to where now defenses are going to be like, whoa, they might run a screen here. You have Saquon Barkley. It's got to be. And
you had Jason Kelce too. I mean, who maybe is the best screen center, certainly of the generation. But you're right, John. Doug Peterson used to have one practice early every summer where the Eagles would just work on landmarks in the screen game. It was the boringest practice. All football practices are boring, but they're just practicing getting to the right landmarks in the screen game. They don't do it as much. I think some of it has to do with a different quarterback and a quarterback that's a different style. They should utilize it more. I think that's fair. Cam Jurgens is very athletic himself as he takes over the center position. And this is a bad job by me, by the way, Jody. We have not mentioned Jack Driscoll signed with the Miami Dolphins. We're an Eagles show, so I probably should have mentioned that yesterday. And Suo Pettis signed with Tampa Bay a couple days ago. Depth on the offensive line is all of a sudden they signed Matt Hennessy, who's had some injury problems, and Jason Kelce's not here, and Cam Jurgens is moving, and you're assuming Tyler Steen could be that. We're used to great offense, at least over the past decade, used to great offensive line play in Philadelphia. Do you just take that for granted? No problem. Everything's going to be fine because Jeff Stoutland's here.
Yes, that's why I didn't get to it today. That's not on you, John. That's on me. I didn't bring it up. So what? Throw somebody to Stout. He'll make him into a backup. That's and guilty as charged. Probably shouldn't do that. But yeah, that's why it's less of a conversation piece.
And that plays into the screen game. So at John Marks Media, discuss that. And if you want to break some missionality news, our buddy, feel free to do that.
Well, I mean, listen, I'm waiting like everybody else to see if he becomes the guy. I saw it. I guess it was yesterday with Driscoll. I was waiting to see how much the Dolphins gave him, if they gave him a little bit more, because it's nice to have a guy that's experienced on that line that can play multiple positions. I was a little bit surprised that they didn't make more of an attempt to sign him. Opeta, I didn't expect him to come back. You could tell that they were ready to move on from him. But if Tyler Steen right now is either your starter or a guy that's going to be at least has the, you feel like has the edge to be the starter. Well, they said very, very early after he played last year, they weren't interested in him being the starter. So you hope the offseason and the fact he enters the second year that he's better. It's a little bit concerning to me because if they have an injury or two, they could be in trouble.
They right now have to address depth on the offensive line. There aren't many guys who are potential starters, and I know that the Eagles probably not going to start a guy they're going to sign at this point. It's going to be purely a backup guy, but the herd is getting a little thin at the offensive line position on free agency. All right, Johnny Marks, how can people best get their hands on your YouTube show? No, they can do it through your Twitter handle and go on your Twitter first, but directly to your YouTube show. How do people best do that?
Yeah, just go to YouTube, subscribe. It's at John Marks Media, and I'm also live on Twitter and Instagram or whatever. And it's 9:00 on most nights during the week. And yeah, so I should have some other news hopefully to be sharing coming up here in the next couple of weeks about where you can find me as well. But
nice.
In the meantime, every night at 9, including tonight, at John Marks Media, and subscribe, comment, like, all that good stuff.
Did you think your Sixers going to blow that game last night? A 14-point lead, and all of a sudden it disappeared in the fourth quarter.
Got to get out of that play-in tournament.
They were great defensively in the third quarter last night, and then they just disappeared for like a 6-minute stretch. I said they're going to blow another game.
But the question is, who thought that they weren't going to blow that game last night?
Me. I had faith. They're blocking shots. They're getting steals. They're playing great defense in the third quarter. Hey, hung on and won it. And Oubre is a guy they got to re-sign for next year. He's been great for him. And that's the kind of stuff you're going to get from John Marks on his YouTube show. Make sure you check him out. We'll get him back on before the draft, and maybe he'll have an announcement for us between now and then. Jay Marks, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for jumping in.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
John Marks, Media, John Marks Media. Follow him on Twitter at John, that's no H, Jon, Marks Media. And that'll get you to his YouTube show and everything else. All right, Johnny Mac coming back. We got just a couple minutes left. Why don't we put a bow on the show?
Let's do it.